Hello guys, and welcome to part 2 of this video lesson called the Transportation Revolution. So in part 1 we talked about westward movement and especially how that impacted society, how that impacted our economy source. Today we are going to really dig into the transportation part of the transportation revolution, call, calling it the innovative transportation, because we had to figure out how are we getting all this product, all these people into the West, and how are we getting product out for trade and stuff. In the late 18th century, primitive methods of travel were still in use in America. Waterborne travel was uncertain and often dangerous. Covered wagon and stagecoach travel over rutted trails were uncomfortable, and all types of travel were very slow. Americans were aware that a transportation network would increase land values, stimulate domestic and foreign trade, and strengthen the American economy. So we were aware that if we worked on our transportation networks around our country, it would do great benefiting our economy. In 1794, a private company completed the Philadelphia-Lancaster Turnpike, a broad paved highway that was similar to the good European highways at that time. It was called a turnpike because as drivers approached the toll gate, they were confronted with a barrier of sharp spikes that was turned aside when they paid their toll. The completion of the Lancaster Turnpike resulted in a turnpike building boom that lasted nearly 20 years. By 1821, nearly 4,000 miles of turnpikes had been completed, mostly connecting eastern cities. Money needed to build the new turnpikes was coming primarily from state governments and in some cases individuals. So the first of this techno-innovative transportation is turnpikes. Constructing decent roads over the Appalachian and in the West was a more difficult task than building those in the East. Although states' rights proponents regularly blocked spending federal funds for internal improvements, one notable exception was the Cumberland Road. In 1811, the federal government begun to construct a turnpike, Cumberland Road, also called the National Road, which stretched 591 miles from Cumberland in western Maryland to Vandalia in Illinois. The project was completed in 1852 with a combination of federal and state aid, with different states receiving ownership of segments of the property. Hold on, guys. I know that my head is cut off. I'm aware. So, this road, the Cumberland Road, had support from the federal government and the state government. Americans benefited from the new turnpikes. However, it was not yet economical to ship bulky goods by land across the great distances in America. Businessmen and inventors began concentrating on improving water transportation. In 1807, Robert Fulton sent the first commercially successful steamboat, the Clermont, from New York City up the Hudson River to Albany. Skeptics initially thought the project would never work and nicknamed the boat Fulton's Folly. The Clermont made the run of 150 miles at about 5 miles per hour, proving that it was an effective vessel. Thereafter, use of this steamboat spread rapidly, with steamers making the run from New Orleans as far north as Ohio. By 1830, there were more than 200 steamers on the Mississippi. So his goal was to better improve water transportation so goods can be processed and moved along the Mississippi River and other rivers. So what else do we have? Steam boats. Good for water. As early as the 1820s, the success of the steamboat was clear. Steamboats played a vital role in opening the West and South to further settlement. They stimulated the agricultural economy of the West by providing better access to markets at a lower cost. Farmers quickly bought land near navigable rivers because they could now easily ship their produce out. Villages at strategic points along the waterways evolved into centers of commerce and urban life. In the 1830s and 1840s, the port of New Orleans grew to lead all others in exports. So the port of New Orleans became our greatest port, our biggest port of America, because it processed a bunch of this of trade and material. Steamboats were also much more comfortable than other form of land transportation at the time. The General Pike, launched in 1819, set the standard for luxurious steamers with marble columns, thick carpets, ornate mirrors, and plush curtains. Luxury steamers evolved into floating palaces, where passengers could dine, drink, dance, and gamble as they traveled to their destinations. While steamboats were conquering western rivers, canals were under construction in the Northeast to further improve their transportation networks. In 1817, the New York legislature endorsed General DeWitt Clinton's plan for connecting the Hudson River with Lake Erie, the Erie Canal. Completed in 1825, the canal ran 363 miles from Albany to Buffalo. The completion of the canal reduced travel time from New York City to Buffalo from 20 days to 6, reducing the cost of moving a ton of freight to $100 to $5, and moved the country a step closer to connecting the Mississippi River and the Atlantic Ocean. The canals also provided water route from New York to Chicago via the Great Lakes and marked the beginning of Chicago's rapid growth. So what else do we have? Canals. Canals connected cities via the water and directly contributed to Chicago's rapid growth afterwards. Okay. The Erie Canal was immediately a financial success, paying for itself within 7 years. The success of the Big Ditch sparked a canal building mania that lasted more than a decade and resulted in around 3,000 miles of waterways by the 1840s. Ohio built the Ohio and Erie Canal, running from the Ohio River to Cleveland, and Indiana built the Wabash and Erie Canal. Both were feeders that supplied farmers west of the Appalachian with water connections to the east. The Erie Canal had broad economic implications. The value of land along the route increased. New cities in New York, such as Rochester and Syracuse, sprang up. Industry in New York boomed, and farming in the Old Northwest attracted thousands of newcomers who could now easily ship their goods to markets on the East Coast. So, canal building also spurred the growth of cities, the growth of technology, the growth of land prices, land sales began jumping. So, both the turnpike and the canal contributed to the emerging national economy, but the most significant development was the railroad. Railroads were faster and cheaper than canals to construct, and they did not freeze over in the winter. Since many states has extended by borrowing heavily to finance their canals, many of the early railroad growth were developed by private investors. So, railroads also became a a good avenue, good transportation method. In 1828, development of the first railroad began in Baltimore, and 4 years later, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad stretched 73 miles. By 1833, the Charleston and Hamburg Railroad extended 136 miles west of Charleston. The Panic of 1837 slowed railroad construction, but by 1840 the United States had over 3,000 miles of railroad tracks, three-fourths of which were in the industrializing North. There were several southern railway lines, but no one single southern railway system. Early railroad pioneers faced several challenges. Tracks with steep grades and sharp curves require more powerful locomotives. Sparks from wood-burning engines caused fires. Brakes were ineffective, and wooden rails toppled with iron straps wore out quickly and broke loose, causing dangerous crashes. The intent of most early railroad builders had been to monopolize the trade of certain districts, not to establish connections with competing centers. So few of the tracks were coordinated into railroad systems. Frequently, railroads went so far as to use tracks of different widths to prevent other lines from using their tracks. So it was all about the money because it was funded by individuals and not a government source project. It was funded by individuals. So they faced lots of challenges. Eventually, all of these railroad obstacles were overcome. Modifications in locomotive designs enabled trains to negotiate sharp curves. Engines that can burn hard coal appeared. Better brakes were developed, and the iron T-rail combined crossties increased durability of the tracks. Rail guards also gradually became standardized, linking the various rail lines together. Water travel was generally more comfortable than the train, but railway travel became the most popular form of transport because it was economical, reliable, and fast. Trains traveled more than twice as fast as, as a stagecoach and 4 times as fast as a steamboat. The development of so many railroads changed American society. The railroad provided indirect benefits by encouraging settlement and expansion of farming, thus transforming agriculture. Much more of the fertile prairie could be developed because the farmers now had access to national markets via the train. American cities were also influenced by railway development. Eastern seaports, along with other immediate centers like Cincinnati, benefited from an increase in exportable goods. other forms of transportation were also working to bind the United States together and to the rest of the world. In 1845, the first clipper ship, the Rainbow, was launched. Clipper ships were long, narrow, and built for speed. With their taller mast and numerous sails, they could overrun a steamer if there was a good breeze. While in operation, clippers carried highly demanded tea from China to America and transported goods to the prospectors in California. Clippers lasted less than 2 decades because although they were fast, they did not have much cargo space. So, this section is called Innovative Transportation. In 1860, in the far west, the Pony Express was established as a form of transportation for carrying mail. Daring pony riders carried mail from Missouri to California in 10 days, an amazing feat for the times. The riders charged horses at stations every 10 miles and rode summer or winter, day or night, good weather or bad. The Pony Express only lasted 18 months, succumbing to Samuel Morse's telegraph machine. The Pony Express was a big deal at the time because it carried mail from Missouri to California in 10 days. That was an amazing feat at the time. The transportation revolution in the United States had been spurred by the decade of the Easterners to tap into all that the West had to offer. Turnpike, canals, steamboats, and railways forged a truly continental economy. Transportation innovations cut the cost and increased the spread of moved goods, helping to create a national market and provide a stimulus for regional speculations. Westerners, with their boundless prairies and swiftly growing population, became important producers of commercial agriculture, supplying both the North and South with food. Northerners supplied the West and the South with textiles and other manufacturing goods. Southerners supplied the North with cotton, the raw material they needed to produce their textile. So this revolution and all these transportation that I laid out, it helped America to be a connected society with each other. And it also helped them to better their economy. So in the next video lesson, we are going to talk about King Cotton, the economy in the South, and we'll get into the issue of slavery as well. See you guys in the next lesson.